Was he talking about me? It all seems like a dream. Those last 20 years seem to have just flown by, and all those events that happened just seem unreal now. But I'm very pleased to say I was involved in them. And now we can move on to the most important people at today's event, the Secularist of the Year nominees. These 6 nominees have been chosen for their outstanding contribution to the secularist cause and to human rights, both within the UK and worldwide. Every one of them has had to face opposition, if not outright abuse, from the religious powers that they challenge. Yet every one of them has refused to stay silent. It's for this reason that every one of our 6 nominees is highly deserving of the Secularist of the Year award. Unfortunately, we've only got one to give out. So the first nominee I want to introduce is Amina Lone. A former Labour parliamentary candidate, Amina co-founded the Social Action and Research Foundation, which strives for a more equitable society by working closely with marginalised communities. Amina has long spoken out against misogyny and extremism in Muslim communities, as well as against the anti-Muslim far right. I'd like to invite Amina to come on stage and say a little more about her work. Amina.
Thank you very much. Might be a friendly stage, but it's still very nerve-wracking looking out to a group of people that are waiting to hear you say something interesting or funny, and I may fail on both of those accounts, but I certainly will try. I want to thank the National Secular Society for the nomination. It is very humbling, and it's also, I think that there is I think there's many people doing deserved work that are unrecognised, and I'm here for them in many ways. I also want to thank, I don't stand here alone, there's many women that stand with me and some men, and I do have to just thank Gina and Iram, Asana, Yasmin, Miriam, Geeta, Pragna, Zara, and also Stephen in particular from the National Secular Society, who has provided invaluable support privately but also publicly, which is where it counts actually in terms of where we are, in terms of the battlefield that we're on. The National Secular Society's research shows that up to 40% of Islamic schools in the UK, state-funded, have hijab as part of their uniform policy. Some of those are with children as young as 4 and 5 years old. With girls imposed on them as young as 4 and 5 years old. You may seem that it's an absurdity that's happening in the UK, but we seem to have this paralysed political state where people will not speak out for fear of being accused of racism or Islamophobia. Many people say to me, what's the problem actually? What's the problem with parents choosing to dress their little girls in shrouds? And actually, the problem is that this is around sexual modesty, and it's a false choice. Those children are not given a choice. Those girls are not given a choice. The hijab represents, and I should very clearly say, I'm a Muslim woman, born and bred in this country, and I'm second generation from a working class background, but this is a class issue as much as it is an issue about representation. The hijab represents multiple aspects of Islamic devotion for the religion for women. It is overwhelmingly a symbol of sexual modesty for females. It's also a hugely controversial piece of clothing. All the Abrahamic faiths, as you will know, have gender codes, and they all expect to enforce them rigidly and do in very formal ways and in informal ways. And the reason that we got together and us the women got together, and I'm the face of it, because there is such fear and threats that people receive, is we got together because we are seeing an increasing number of young girls as young as 4 where they are being encouraged to wear these items of clothing, even though it is utterly un-Islamic for a child to have to be dressed or veiled in that way. There's absolutely no religious mandate for it, yet we have government supporting it, we have politicians supporting it, we have civil servants supporting it, and we have other faith leaders supporting it. And I'm absolutely convinced that if we had little girls who were 4 or 5 years old from a Christian background wearing clothing akin to the Another chance to be about. What's the series that's going on at the moment? With the Handmaid's Tale. I'm convinced if you had similar situation going on, there'd be an outcry by the liberal left. But yet we have silence here, apart from people like yourself, which is why it's such an honour to be here. And one wonders where's the outcry from the fellow defenders of their faith, even though this is a perversion of their faith, they are silent. The reason it's a false choice is because communities and families pressurise children and young people to adhere to these modesty codes. Women are expected to cover up when they go into mosques. They're expected to cover up when they go into Islamic classes after school, madrasas. They're expected to cover up at home. So actually, where is the choice? There is no choice, and this is the false dichotomy. The hijab has also become the most obvious representation of religion. It is manifest just by it covering your head, but it doesn't stop there. We may say that parents have a choice to cover their girls if they choose to, because it doesn't mean anything. But actually, what happens is that often the girls are told that they cannot show their legs, that they cannot show their arms, that they cannot show their shoulders, that they cannot wear swimming costumes, that they cannot wear PE skirts. It doesn't stop at the hijab at the first point. That is a manifestation for it. And the reason this happens is because women, females, girls, we are expected to carry our izzat, our honour, in our bodies. So our very bodies are branded with honour. And if we dare to cover them, then we must be ostracised. So imagine trying to break out from that pressure, and imagine the pressure that puts up on young women, but also what it does to young men and what their expectations of what females should look like. It's the exact flip side of the over-sexualization of our society, but we don't treat them equally. In Islam, there's a tradition of seeking knowledge, and the Prophet Muhammad, and I'm a Muslim woman and I'm practicing, because, obviously there's good and bad Muslims, so I just better put that out there for all the social media fans of mine. The Prophet Muhammad said that there is an expectation of seeking knowledge which is compulsory for men and for women, for every Muslim. Yet you never hear that within the religious circles. You never hear that from our friends from religious persuasions of other organisations that criticise us and lobby us and create hate for us. Yet we know that what they want to do when they take young children is that they don't want to teach them about critical thought. They don't want to teach them about informed choice. They don't want to teach them about freedom of choice or equity of people. Actually, it's about conditioning and indoctrination. And we're increasingly seeing that in our primary schools. We're increasingly seeing that in our secondary schools. And I'm increasingly seeing from an inner city environment in our local areas. So it's not about just the hijab of the head, it's the hijab of the mind. It's about a purdah of intellectual thought and choice, and that is the battle that we're having. And I thank NSS for your invaluable support and for standing in solidarity with us, and for all the people that are not here, because it's a lonely road, but it's an absolute necessary road. And the silent majority have to get up and speak now, because this is our time. And just to close, just to say that there is a concerted effort, as we all know, to limit our freedoms of choice and challenge of religious doctrine under the guise of Islamophobia or racism. And the extreme is becoming the norm. I've been called an Islamophobe, even though I'm a Muslim woman, because I don't fit into that guise. And my call to you is that we may not have blasphemy laws anymore, but we have a blasphemy culture. And actually, we need to push right up against that. And it's not the soft-boiled, it's not the hard-boiled extremism that we have to worry about. It's the soft-boiled extremism, and this is what they are doing. And I say this as a woman that's from these communities. So let's learn the lessons from history, and let's robustly defend a hard-won secular democracy.